this is the Strategic Sourcing Insights, sponsored by Focal Point. I'd like to introduce our panel for this. First of all, on my left, we have Quentin Remy, Head of Global Procurement and Strategic Sourcing at MCI. We have Amanda Winterflood, Head of Great Procurement Experience and Indirects at Hotel Chocolat, and Matthew Buckingham, SVP Marketing and Sales at Focal Point. A warm welcome for my panellists, please. Okay, thank you very much. We will get on to questions at the end, as ever, but let's start with, I guess, the most obvious question. And this is something which I think is key to this whole discussion, about the key differences for each of you between sourcing and strategic sourcing, because they're very different things. Quentin, you're closest to me. I'll start with you. How do you differentiate the two, between sourcing and strategic sourcing?
So what I do is basically linked to hotels. We were discussing just before during the session that we're doing such different things between the three of you, and I'm sure between yourselves. For us at MCI, we work very much with hotel chains and independent hotels as well, venues, convention, like these ones. And when we talk about strategic sourcing and procurement, we really talk about how to harness the global buying power that we have with MCI. We're quite a large, one of the leaders in the event space, and a large company with 1,700 people in 60 different offices. And strategic sourcing for us is really when we have the experts in those offices. We have kind of relay points. I'm based in Geneva, but we have relays in all of those offices that do strategic sourcing. And when it comes to that application, so buying hotels, buying venues, we talk about strategic sourcing. We have maybe one added thing, which is procurement for us, at least, is when we buy rooms that we resell afterwards. So this is mostly for PCO associations, so congresses, almost similar to this conference that we are here today, but mostly pharmaceutical and medical. And this is procurement because there's an extra layer of terms and conditions, and very specific conditions that are different to strategic sourcing.
I'll open up to the rest of the panel.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I'll jump in if you
want. Yeah, go for it.
Strategic sourcing for me is really around something that impacts the rest of the business in a way that could impact the business. It could change the way that you do business. So you're making sure you're buying from the right strategic supplier, therefore. So, just simple sourcing. Somebody wants to buy 27 of these, you can simply go and source it. It doesn't matter. It's not going to impact you. I'll take an example. I deal with a very large retailer in the USA. They've got 150,000 employees or something like that. They spend a huge amount of money on ocean freight. Now, they could go and try and buy that anywhere they want, but it's very, very strategic to them, because if they buy it from the wrong person and the boat sinks, that's going to cause them some issues. They're going to have an empty store and they're not going to sell anything. So strategically, it makes a big impact on them. That's what I would say. Focal Point is not a sourcing solution, I hasten to add. We kind of jumped on this so that it was an opportunity to talk about something slightly different.
Yeah, and just to add, I think sourcing, you probably know what the end state's going to be when you start the process. You need 20 pens, and it's either going to be from Raymond's or Amazon Business or whatever. Strategic sourcing, you actually don't know what that end solution's going to be. And going through the process and doing the work and working with your stakeholders and really going wide into that supply base and talking to different people in the chain, that gets you to a very different outcome, which is fantastic, because that means you learned and you really looked at what is out there and what you need to get to that solution. So I love it when there's surprises. And to me, that means that you really strategically source that specification or that need.
See, we're trying to stop you having surprises.
Oh,
We're actually trying to define it in advance. But
yeah.
I think that's where AI is still so, it still needs to catch up with human intelligence for sure. You're going to discover stuff that a system can't. without a question.
Yeah.
And creativity as well. I mean,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
surprise can lead to,
Yeah.
to creativity or the other way around.
Yeah.
Completely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'll move things on. And it was such a simple question to start with, but I think it was a key place to start. It's such an important word. It's above our heads there. Well, let's move on to looking about alignment, about how you align sourcing strategies with business goals to add value, to stay competitive. Thoughts on that? Amanda, I'll start with you if I can. How do you make sure those two things work alongside each other?
Yeah, well, it's critical, or else you have no credibility and you'll be very busy, not getting anything of substance. But there's the more tactical ways to align. So does the business need cash? So you're focusing on payment terms. Do they need savings and profits? You're focusing on EBITDA. Or is it actually you need a secure supply? Because if you don't buy that, then you're going to stop the line. So there's those more tactical alignments. And then there's the more strategic in terms of what geographies are you expanding to? What product lines? What service offerings? And do you have the supply base to enable that expansion? So how are you helping drive the future business by ensuring you've got that right supplier base to support it? So, yeah.
Yep. For us, it all comes down to how you define value. I mean, for business objectives, I believe in our sector, in hotel, in event management, it's very often strategic sourcing or procurement is very often linked to better, faster, cheaper, and in other sectors as well. But for us, it's critical. I've thought about an example this morning on my way here. Early 2024, we completely restructured our procurement hub in Geneva, so where our headquarters are. And that was the design, the design, what we had in mind when we wanted to design that. Better, faster, cheaper. We wanted to have experts in strategic sourcing, and that's why we completely revamped from scratch our team in Geneva. And I mean, since then we had more clients. It led to a lot of cost savings for our clients, which is kind of the virtuous circle.
Yeah.
That's why you get more clients.
That's good.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, what I'm seeing, I've been around for a very long time, and I spoke about this morning actually, is, procurement started as saving money. That's why procurement was there. It was to save money. As time changed, around 2000, lots of things happened, .com, Y2K was potentially an issue. It turned out not to be generally. But then you had 9/11 as well. So you had all of these things happening, and everybody suddenly started to think about risk. Saving the company was critical. So that was something that needed to be reported, needed to be thought of when you were doing procurement. And as time's gone on, from 2015 or so, ESG is really important, sustainability generally, the ability to deal with diverse suppliers as well becomes more and more critical, and I'm seeing this from more and more people of how do you manage all of those things and how do you report them. The company needs to report it, but procurement has such an impact on that. And I think this is a huge opportunity for procurement to actually, I'm not going to say get a seat at the table, even though I just did, but find a way to actually add value to the business in a way that it's never ever done before. You're starting to impact the whole value of the company, the top line of the company, not just the bottom line. And I think that's really cool. It's a really cool time to be in procurement. Said nobody ever until today, basically.
I can guarantee what the quote is that comes out of this panel now. That is the one. That's the one that's in bold in the middle. There you go, Matthew. Thank you. You were talking there briefly about cost saving. So let's move on to that, and I'll start with you, if I may, about the different methods there are now, the different modern methods there are way to strategically find ways to find those cost savings. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is a really interesting place. I mean, first of all, you talked about Amazon Business and things earlier. I mean, sometimes it's just easier to just do it from there. You're going to get a decent price. It's maybe not the best price, but it's good enough, and you're not going to get screwed, right? That's good. So that helps you. And if you can drive your users to something like that, instead of them going to their buddy down the street and buying something awesome, you've saved money on that immediately. As you get into the sourcing area, to real sourcing and starting to send out RFPs and stuff, you can then start to look at the automated tools. There's a few out there that completely automate the tail spend, for example, and enable you to just plug and play almost. I don't really want to plug Focal Point at the moment, but from a request by the user in Focal Point, you can send it straight to a fair market, for example, and the sourcing will be done, and it'll come back with the result, and it's done it for you. So that kind of takes away that tail spend issue that the people have had over the years. But then you've got other tools out there that are actually using things like game theory and behavioral science to do the negotiation. So instead of saying to the suppliers, give me your price, you're saying to them, this is the price I want to pay. Can we have it at that price? Which changes the dynamic. But you can't do that unless you really know what you're talking about. And the new systems today are allowing you to do that. So there's some really exciting stuff going on in that area, which you can plug into Focal Point, but you can also use standalone as well.
That sounds really cool. Would love to learn more. I also like a
Come
bit.
and talk to me later.
Yeah. I tend to go just to old-fashioned pen and paper, but spent about 8 years of my career with A.T. Kearney, so I'm a big fan of the Kearney purchasing chessboard. And I know the 64 levers might seem like a lot, but I find it much more simpler than Kraljic because you go to that realm where you're on the chessboard and you really get specific ideas on what to use and exploit in that area. And it's not Battleship where it's an exact coordinate, but what's that range? And I found actually taking stakeholders on it is super useful. You can back away from the desk, you literally have it printed out, you question what's the supply power, what's the demand power, and you can see the light bulbs clicking and you can see them, they feel like they're doing some negotiations, some strategic thinking, and the head of engineering, he went from a skeptic to oh my gosh, I've got my chessboard printed on the wall in a 1-hour conversation. So I'd say really want to learn more about the cool stuff, but sometimes getting away from the desk as well and doing some thinking I find really helpful.
Yeah, and I would say, some of these tools, they're supporting that, but you still need people involved in the final negotiation, the discussions. You need to build a rapport with the suppliers still. Tail spend, not so much.
Yeah, that's
let's just
demand management.
Let's just shovel that out. That's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're buying 57,000 tons of chocolate beans, for example, you need to have a relationship with the people. But you still want to get your best price.
Yeah, for sure.
The best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And you have a book, right? I'm almost jealous that I didn't take a book to put some notes in there. Now I have to improvise.
There's a recording.
Yeah.
For sure.
No, and I fully agree with both of you. I was going to say that at MCI we very much value. We have a quote that we say for ages. We were born in 1987, and we have a quote since that day. So when people come together, magic happens, and we try to live by this, even though it's a very, wow catchphrase, But we try to live by it. And in procurement, especially, we have very strong long-term relationship with hotel chains. So we have that's my daily life. So speaking to hotels, trying to have really solid foundations that we then can spread out to our local markets. And we have 60 of them, so it's quite an intensive job. When you have those relationships, and I'm pretty sure we'll go a bit maybe beyond after that, but when you have those strong relationships, that's what really enable to have huge leverage for our clients, at least. This is what makes the difference, and it happens all the time on a daily basis. If you don't have them, it's quite tricky to do because it's a long-term relationship that enables that. So you need a long period of time to make it happen, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
And then you facilitate it with definitely. We use, for instance, we have a global partner that is called Cvent. I don't know if you know it, which is one of the tech leader in the event space, and they are a big support into making a relationship thing into something digital and facilitate, and it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah. We were talking earlier actually about tribal knowledge and understanding, what you're doing with different suppliers and enabling that discussion. So it feeds into that. It's you need to know what you're doing because you've got those very strong relationships, but you have to be careful. It's not just one person. I was talking to a company recently, and there's a guy, he's been with the company in procurement for 63 years.
Wow.
So working for this company in procurement for 63 years, he's decided to retire next year.
He was born
I
in
would
the
hope so.
company.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's going to be 80. He thought it's a good time to retire. So, but how much knowledge is that guy taking with him? It's scary. You know, maybe
lot
he's
of voice
forgotten it all. I
notes.
don't know, but it's really scary. And you need to capture that knowledge. You need to be able to facilitate this ongoing relationships with your business people.
I wonder how many years the next person replacing him is going to take.
I was going to say exactly the same
Do the
thing.
handover.
As, you know, I was told I'm a geriatric Gen X, but you know, with millennials and Gen Z, it's a different work methodology. People don't stay in companies for as long as they did generally. So yeah.
Yeah, we don't just need that knowledge, we need him on this stage next year. That'd be amazing. That'd be fantastic. With the greatest
give him a
respect to
call.
all of our all of our
give him a call.
panelists.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic. I'm going to move on to what I'm going to subtly title the blow your own trumpet question. You'll see why it's subtle. I'd like to know some success stories. So it might be within your own organisation or clients you've worked with, where successful sourcing projects have really made a difference, where frankly everyone has sat down, you've come up with a strategy, you've come up with a plan, and bam, it's worked. I'll start with you, Amanda, if I can. Any you'd like to flag?
Sure, I guess the bullet point on the CV. So when I joined Hotel Chocolat, September 2022, our energy broker was like, you need to retender. Your contract's expired, you need to get this sorted before winter, and energy prices were doing this, which is what cacao prices are doing at the moment. But I said, okay, let's run a tender, see what comes back. And what came back was a 54% price increase. And that's not a good way to start your procurement career at a brand new company. And granted, this was the first indirect procurement role Hotel Chocolat ever had. So I was like, I can't recommend this. I'll be like gone before my probation period. And using the
Just wait 3
yeah,
months.
exactly. Using the strategic sourcing process and really looking at the supply base, talking with other people in procurement, talking with going to conferences, et cetera, realized that now Hotel Chocolat was eligible to go onto a flex contract. So before you had to be huge to hedge energy and be in that type of contract, but the requirements had lowered. And investigating and moving us from a fixed contract where you have security on the rate, but because you don't have that risk on the rate, it's quite a high rate premium, versus hedging where you have to say, I want X amount this month and X amount that month, and then you're subject to the spot market. That's a big transition for an organization, a big risk difference. But the great thing about Hotel Chocolat is we're quite fast and nimble. We're only about 250 in annual revenue. So in 3 months, by the January board meeting, we moved to a flex contract from October. And that saved us about £2 million compared to if we had stayed at that price increase. And $750,000 was actually less than what we paid the year before. So
I'm glad there was a happy ending to
Yeah,
that, because
it
that was
was.
pretty dicey to start with. I was getting
Yeah.
concerned. It was a bit like the Disney film where you think the main characters died, but then their eyes open. It was a bit like that.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, we saved it.
Quentin, can we come to you
Isn't that
next on
horror
that, please?
Yep. So I also thought about this for quite some time, not this morning. We have 6,000 activations annually in all of our offices, so it was very difficult to choose from. And I actually got back to 2021, where we were chosen to be the official housing agency for COP26, which was not too far from London, in Glasgow. And we basically, so we were in charge of selecting of the hotels and venues for this huge event. And we sat down, I talked just before about how to define value, and we kind of sat down with the UN and the local government in saying, what is it that will define success for the event? Because, I mean, MCI can do it, but there's thousands of agencies that are as capable as MCI. And what's the USP? What are we going to get out of this hotel procurement vision for that event? And one of the things that we came as a plan was to create from scratch, according to UN SDGs, complete assessment for our supply chain. So we evaluated almost 200 hotels that we contracted for the event. And we basically, I think it was around 60 questions, we evaluated them and integrated completely into the decision-making process for our participants, whether it was for groups, but up to Barack Obama or whomever actually joined the conference. He was not selecting his own room, but there was a notion of also integrating into the UN and the groups and the participants coming to attending the conference to actually add another layer of sustainability. And it's kind of a buzzword, right? Sustainability at the moment and since quite some time now. But we actually managed to make it happen concretely and hopefully change a bit of the way that we look at hotels as well.
Yeah. And Matthew, I guess you're approaching this from a slightly different scenario. I'm sure you've got plenty of different sort of case studies and people you'd like to flag. Pick one.
Yeah, let me take one from, it's not so long ago, it's 2.5 years ago, right? So Ukraine war was starting. This is a really, really cool one. So where is most of the corn in the world grown? It's two countries. It's Russia and it's Ukraine. Suddenly we've got a bit of an issue going on. Unfortunately, we've still got a bit of an issue going on. So this commodity is now going to become really, really seriously short. So with the company I was working with then, and Georgia Pacific, so big paper manufacturer. Why does paper manufacturer need corn? They need cornstarch to make the paper crisp and stiff. And I used to be in the paper trade, so this is why this one comes into my mind. But suddenly you can't find it. You can't, or you're not going to be able to get it. However, using AI and using predictive analytics, you can actually get ahead of that, and you can predict it much earlier. But more importantly, you can actually run the process much, much more quickly as well. So by orchestrating that process through from left to right, and I'm getting good at this now, left to right, you can actually get things done much more quickly. And normally it took them 6 months to do their buy on corn, because they'd go all over the place, or cornstarch. They'd go all over the place, they'd find the right people, and they'd then use their Excel spreadsheets and everything else to do that buy. But using an orchestration solution and a sourcing solution that is more automated, they were able to do all of that within 4 weeks. Wow. So they got ahead of their competition. They stamped their name onto those barrels of cornstarch, and they secured their supply for the next 6 months. At the time, thinking that was long enough, obviously. But 2.5 years later, here we still are, right?
Yeah, that's a fine example. I am going to have to push on because we've had a flurry of questions come in from the virtual streaming audience, and I do want to get to the room for a quick question if I can. This one specifically for you, Amanda. In the context of strategic sourcing, what criteria apply when buying from emerging markets where suppliers may have unique challenges?
Yeah, thank you for that great question. Yeah, we have our code of conduct, and actually now Hotel Chocolat got acquired by Mars in February of this year. So we now also have their code of conduct and their resources to ensure that we're compliant with all those standards of a ethical corporation. So thank you.
Any questions from the room before, unless I return to my list of questions here that have come in from the audience? Nothing immediate that I can see. Next question, I guess this goes to everyone really, about how far can procurement help businesses enter new markets, geographies and so on, when the strategic sourcing needs may be more for the here and now. Your thoughts on all of that? How procurement and strategic sourcing can help enter new markets?
Yeah, I'll take it if I may. I think, supplier discovery becomes really critical. Everybody's talking about onshoring and nearshoring as much as possible. You don't really want to be shipping stuff from, the United States to Thailand, for example, if you can possibly avoid it. So if you're trying to go into those new markets, you need to discover new suppliers quickly and efficiently. To do that, you need technology to do it. So I think procurement needs to be supported in that. But you can start to do that whole procurement analysis and understanding of a market in advance of actually opening up into that market as well, by plugging in systems like Dun & Bradstreet and EcoVadis and whoever else, Ditch Carbon's here. Go and talk to him. He's awesome. He's got a database of carbon footprints for 250,000 suppliers, for example. But getting all of that information together and actually making some analysis before you move actually helps you to start with your, start running.
And I think too, once you have that short list going and seeing, like spending some time in market and really meeting with those suppliers, you can't put a price on going to their offices or going to their facilities and being there firsthand to see what's happening on the ground and what the situation is that you're working with. So investing that time and that travel and expense, I think you can't really put a price on that.
We still have site inspections, site visits, however we want to call it, in the event industry, and it's in spaces like this before, like a year, 2 years sometimes, before actually having that conference happening, because you can't. We have 3D tours, we have so much technology now, but you can't picture it the way you would picture it when you're there. So I completely agree with you. I have an event. We have a procurement, actually, first ever procurement meeting that we have next month. With our top buyers within MCI offices. And I went there to see the space because I've never been. And yeah, it's completely it's completely different. And I looked at the 3D tour before and I was like, is it enough? No, I still need to go. And same thing, I think, also for contract negotiation. When we have big events, like I used the COP26 example, but it's the same thing with many other congresses or other events, and it works for also different sectors, but for us at least, it's very much the negotiation and the relationship. I talked about global ones, but it's also local ones. This is the way that we work actually with our local offices. We have this kind of top-down approach with guidelines, but then we have this bottom-up because they are relaying the information. We have those people on site that knows the hotel, that are going very often, that they're friends. It's an industry that changed quite a lot. You mentioned it with Gen Z, Gen Y. There's a high staff turnover now, especially in the event industry, and everybody knows each other, and you can't put a price on that.
Yeah,
a lot of it is that attention to detail, and I'm afraid we are going to have to wrap things up there. Time has run away from us, as it tends to, before we move on to our next session. So warm round of applause for Quentin, Amanda and Matthew, please.
Thank you.